Hello, everybody, and welcome back. So today I want to talk about something that I have only heard one other spiritual teacher speak of in all these years, and there may have been more. I'm sure there are, but I just haven't heard them. I've only heard one, and I listened to a lot of non-duality on YouTube. So it can't be that common. And what I want to talk to you about is the secret life of non-dual glimpses. And I say the secret life because the truth is right here as usual, but we're overlooking it as usual. So what I want to do is give you a tool today, which is going to be the truth, to simply help you see through that. Because of everything that I talk about, there's nothing I don't think that I talk about more than glimpses of the truth. Is it going to last? Will it come back? How do I get it back? How do I keep it? How do I make it permanent? How do I this? How do I that? So, and of course, the problem is in all of those, there's a common problem in all of those questions, and that's I. Because Fred can't tell you anything because there's no Fred here. And you can't, and Bob and Susan can't hear anything over there because there's no Bob and Susan, so to speak, either. There's the form there's a Fred unit here. There's a pattern of Fredness, meaning all these repetitive patterns that make them, they're repetitive, and they, you can recognize them. They're recognizable. So what I want to tell you about non-dual glimpses is that we're always, once you have one, if you haven't had one, you're in for a treat if you just hang around, because most people in non-duality will have a glimpse or more glimpses. If they just stick to even the road traveled, you'll have glimpses probably because I hear it from all over the place. But the problem is you don't understand what they are. You don't recognize what they are. Because glimpses, we believe that they are glimpses of truth and that they rise and they subside. We see them and then we don't. We experience them and then we don't. So we know that this thing that we experience and then we don't, if that's the truth of it, then that can't be the truth, because the truth doesn't come and go. And yet these glimpses, at least seemingly, come and go. So what is the mystery here, really? It's going to make a lot of difference to a lot of you. I know it is. So just hang on. A glimpse is not a sign of a coming awakening, and it's not the sign that there's not going to be a coming awakening. The glimpses you're having, they're not about awakening later or anything like that. They're actually awakeness itself. So these little pops that we just dismiss with the word glimpses or other stuff, and I do it too, so I'm not pointing a finger at anybody, but they are actually, if you look in the Seeker's Non-Dual Handbook, you will find out that there is no place in there that says awakening happens like this. It happens, it's incredible, it's extraordinary, it's bliss-filled, it's radiant. It lasts for days or years or a lifetime. You will not find that written any credible place. So what I want to tell you is that the glimpse is just you who are always awake, you who are already always awake. Instead of having a glimpse of truth through the body instead of Fred having a glimpse of truth, what we have is a glimpse of truth, or not a glimpse of truth, but the truth, experiencing a Fred-free moment. Now, you've heard that part before. Not often, but I know you've heard it here before. So when you have one of these glimpses and it feels like it rises to you and then it falls, it comes and it goes, it's incredible, and then it's not, or it's not that incredible, but it's amazing or something. It's still, it's a moment to be relished usually. And there's nothing about it that needs to be permanent. See, awakeness doesn't know anything about permanent or impermanent. It doesn't know anything about awake and not awake. What you really are is awakeness itself. And when you, awakeness itself, experience a so-called glimpse of truth through the unit, and what it amounts to is you're just flashing yourself. You know, like a guy in the park. You're just flashing yourself. You're showing yourself the truth. And what are you showing yourself the truth of? Well, there's just one thing going on here, and guess who's it? You are. Now, I can also say that there's one thing going on here, and I am it, and that is going to be equally valid. But when I say I am it, or you say you are it, we can't be talking about these units. We have to be talking about awakeness itself, the animating presence that makes these bodies move and talk and feel and have emotions and go to Paris and all this stuff. It's the animating presence that we're really after. And who is after the animating presence? The animating presence. How do we know it's the animating presence that's after itself? Because ultimately there is nothing else. The rest of this, on one level or another, it may, you know, I don't want to say it's not real. I mean, it's as real as anything else. But I want to take real with a real grain of salt here. Because we experience things that we believe to be real all the time. I mean, I get people report to me all the time, well, I know I'm here. And I know they're not. And how much does Bob weigh? 150 pounds or whatever, kilos. I guess not 150 kilos. That'd be a pretty big Bob. Yeah. But what I want you to recognize is that it's just this presence. See, I always was waiting for the presence. Eckhart Tolle would talk about it as a presence, and you can feel and he would call it the animating presence. I stole it from him, but he doesn't mind. I think he's done all right anyway. And so this animating presence, where is it? Here. When is it? Right now. Whose is it? It's itself. It's owned only by itself, so to speak. You never have an awakening. You know why? Because the you that you think you are simply does not exist. And you will be thinking, what in the hell is he talking about? I know I'm stepping on a lot of toes. And I'm going to make some people frustrated and some other people mad probably, but you just got to hear the truth anyway. I just can't get up here and bullshit you. Okay, there's plenty of people doing that. So this thing is so much simpler than we imagine. That's the problem, is it's too simple. We want to complicate it. We want it to be our achievement when we reach enlightenment, when I overcome the odds and the obstacles. And I, the grandiose one, find enlightenment. You can't find enlightenment because you are enlightenment. There's only enlightenment. That's it. And I know that doesn't feel like it. This can be it. And what do I mean when I say this? This is it. Well, at the moment, I will say what I'm saying, talking about is manifestation. Manifestation is what? It's a dream. Whose dream is it? Well, I don't know that it's owned at all. It's just happening. But if it were owned, it would be owned by awakeness. So any experience in manifestation will be awakening, awakeness, experiencing itself, but all over the world, the great vast majority will be discovering themselves objectively, objectively, but they don't know it. They don't know they're experiencing themselves, and you may not. You may think that you are having all kinds of experiences in that life that you think you're living, but you're not living that life. That life is living you. The animating presence is imagining a life that seems so much more true when it's happening through a human being. I don't know why, right? And it's the same animating presence that's in all animals too, in all trees and all plants. And there's one thing going on. Count them. One. So there cannot be the one thing plus the person searching for the one thing. The only thing that can search for the one thing is the one thing. And it will only do that so long as it remains confused. But it's almost impossible, it seems like sometimes, to bring somebody to the simple truth, because we just want all this complicated stuff. We want to use calculators and telescopes and formulas and practices and all sorts of rituals, whatever, anything to cover up the truth. Because the truth is, you're it. And that glimpse, that is a sign that, if you will, from a relative standpoint, it means that awakening has already occurred. Now, really, nobody ever wakes up because there's nobody here. There's just awakeness in a Fred suit and a that suit and that suit and that suit. Betsy suit, Willie suit, Jack suit. Same thing. Tree suit, fence suit. Wears a lot of suits. Wears them well, too. Well enough to fool itself. Which is, well, why would it do that? You can't ask why. You just can't. I mean, you can, but you're going to be frustrated for the rest of your life. Recognize that there's some things in the universe, in the happening, which is bigger than the universe, that there's some things in the happening that human beings are unable to understand. You know, scientists have talked about that we may find another species, and, well, think about Planet of the Apes, right? And we may find ourselves with another species, find another species, but we may find out that they are vastly superior to us. Well, that's going to lead to a lot of depression, isn't it? I'd like to have the antidepressant lock on some stock for that, if that ever happens, because we'll just be so disappointed. But I thought it was the greatest thing on earth. As a matter of fact, I didn't even think that mankind was the greatest thing on earth. I had narrowed it down to this one. This had the nerve to believe it was at the very center of the universe, because we are slaves to our eyes, and we're slaves to our ears and all the senses. Because when I see something, hear that? When I see something, but there's no I there. So when something is seen, there's really no seer and no seeing, there's just seeing. There's the verb-like seeing, not a noun-like person, place, or thing that's doing the seeing or being seen. There's just the seeing. So the glimpse is the full-blown enlightenment within a little tiny time frame. But awakeness doesn't know anything about time. Awakeness does not live in time. Time, which is just a concept, we can say lives within awakeness if you, but the problem is there's no without awakeness, so there's no outside. So you can't really say it's all occurring inside of awakeness, because inside doesn't mean anything without outside. I will, however, continue to use the word inside because it's skillful, it's just not true. And this is such a vital concept to grab hold of, is that it is skillful, but it's not true. This talk that I'm giving you right now, it's skillful. It's real skillful. It may look like it's not, but it is. Very, very skillful. But it's not true. In other words, what I'm telling you is the closest that the Fred unit, so to speak, the closest that truth can get to itself when it pours through a Fred unit. Because what is this Fred unit? It's conditioning. What's Fred's life? It's conditioning, rising to meet conditions. This way, that way. Yesterday, there's no yesterday. Today there is, and tomorrow, there's no tomorrow either. There's no time. Not in truth. And awakeness is the truth. It doesn't live in truth. You can't live in truth either. And that's what so many of us want to do. We want to live in truth. But you can't do it. You can only live as truth. And to live as truth, well, gee whiz, that means you might need to be open to changes as the truth begins to slowly dawn on awakeness through the murky water of localized conditioning. In this case, we could say Fred's conditioning, but there's no Fred. So it is not Fred's conditioning. It's the Fred conditioning, because we have all agreed to call this thing Fred in lieu of anything else. I mean, it's not, we can call it a Fred, we can call it a horseshoe. As long as we all agree that this is a horseshoe, we can all say, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to go to a meeting with horseshoe. And if we're all agreed on it, we're not looking to play horseshoes. We're looking to hear horseshoe talk to us. Names are treacherous. They are very, very useful within a relative sense, but they are treacherous in terms of truth, because we believe a name is the thing, and it's not. And I go over this over and over and over again. The word apple doesn't tell you anything about round, sweet, red, nothing. Stem, leaves, skin, seeds, core, thing like apple. What is it? That's a name for a bunch of patterns that have temporarily combined to be seen to exist as what we call apple. But what did they call it before they called it apple? They called it, hey, hand me that red thing, right? Hand me that red thing. I want to eat it. I said, well, it might be poisonous. No, I've seen other people eat it. It's safe. And you know what? In order for us to understand and be able to pass this information on to others, in order to be able to communicate, let's call it apple. But that's what apple is good for, communicating. The only thing being, understand the very gist of the truth of communication is that there's only one thing going on here. So communication is always between illusions. It's all between happenings. It's all between conditioning and conditions. That's what it is. There's nothing to back up apple. We can hold up an apple and say apple at the same time, and then we can say this is backing it up. But if you don't tell me what it is and you start talking about apples or something, I won't recognize that that's what you've got in your hand. I have to enter the agreement, and that's what we have here. We have a broad series of agreements. We have decided, there goes my phone, we have decided what what's true, what everything is, and we have reached agreements about it. We have reached agreements about democracy, and reached agreements about other political systems like communism or kings and aristocrats and all that stuff, and in many ways. Those are just agreements. Is that there's somebody born, and he's born in a big house, maybe, probably so, born in a big house, and he's waited on hand and foot, and he's fed special foods and wears special clothes, and then somewhere along the line, somebody says, "You're Bob," and he says, "I'm Bob," and then you say, "Well, Bob, guess what? You're the future king of our country." And what does that mean? Well, you're just blessed divinely. That's what they used to say. They used to tell each other we're blessed by the divine. What a great way to sell yourself to the world. Well, I've heard that I'm the divine, that I've been brought, or I am put here by the divine to rule you. Boy, that's a pretty scary thing to argue with. Because what if they're right and you start saying they're wrong and they smite you in a biblical sense? So we put up rules and regulations and punishment for any infraction of rules and regulations. When back in the aged days, long ago, they would say that if they had a witch, if someone they suspected of being a witch, then you put them on the big, what they call ducking something, whatever it is, and put them on the ducking pond, and a big lever kind of thing, and you got them attached to it. And you lower them down in the water and you pick them up and you lower them down in the water. It's kind of like waterboarding, but really way over the top. And what happens is if they are a witch, then they will live through that. And if they die, they know she wasn't a witch after all, was she? Oops. I was listening this morning to the radio, and I guess it's going to be a pretty long video, but at any rate, I was listening to the radio this morning, and on it they were talking about hallucinogenics and how they came from native cultures, and they used the American Indians as an example, but there are examples all over the world. And for thousands of years, these native cultures have used these things for holy journeys, sacred visions, all of this. And then there was a rich white man, who decided that he wanted to have this great experience that was being told about. I forgot, there was a big story in Life magazine back in the day, and everybody read it, and then everybody wanted to have that experience. Well, what happened was that everybody joined up and went down there, and they just screwed up Mexico and points south, just by the masses of seekers, and they didn't bring anything really to the table. They masqueraded as poor people so that they could maybe fool these people into giving them the sacred medicine, so that they could have it. They were after enlightenment. Just like we are, right? We're after enlightenment. They were after enlightenment, and they just didn't understand the way that this works. Is it all works backwards? What's looking for enlightenment? Awakeness. What is enlightenment? The recognition by awakeness of awakeness. That's what it is. So now you're not just, everything is awake. I mean, there's nobody taking a nap, permanent nap here. Everything is actually awake, but it's not awake, it's awakeness. So we have awakeness, but see, if you've got an ego, which means that you have put something solid and powerful and firm in the middle of a hurricane where there's only vacant space. If you've decided you own the hurricane and that it's yours and all that, then you're the boss. You're running things. But you're not running things. You're being run. Is what you argued. Let me tell you what's talking to you. An animated cadaver. That's the truth. This is not a living body on its own. It's a body that is inhabited by the animating presence of the universe. And guess what it's talking to? It's talking to the animated presence of the universe. That's what you are. The whole thing. You've been ridiculously thinking you're just one of these things. I used to think I was this. I did. I really did for 50 years plus. I don't even live in time, but this thing did. And for 50 plus years, it believed. I mean, it did think it was the center of the universe, but not quite as literally as I'm speaking of it right now. See, in the end, it is all about you. Not just as you always suspected, but it's just not all about you in the way that you suspected it would be. And a glimpse is awakening. It's full awakening. Because the same thing is seen whether it's 1 second or a lifetime or 2 years or whatever it is. The same thing is seen. The truth is known. The problem is that truth, whether it was just a glimpse or it lasted 2 weeks. Well, if it lasts 2 weeks, I mean, let's take a look at geologic time. Isn't that a glimpse? Isn't 40 years of enlightenment just a glimpse for awakeness itself, of itself? It's just a glimpse. This is eternity. The problem is that we are not satisfied with what we've gotten. You may have had more than a glimpse. It lasted 2 weeks. It lasted 2 days. It lasted 2 years, whatever. I've had 2 clients that were, and may have had more, but I know of, well, I've actually had I've had several clients that have had long periods of awakeness. More than one of them has become a teacher, but they became a teacher operating from the unit's memory, not from its current experience, if you will. A glimpse is a glimpse of what? It's a glimpse that there's no Fred. It's a glimpse that there's only this. And since there's only this and not something to describe this, what is this? We don't know. What's it for? People love to ask me that. What is my purpose, Fred? Your purpose is to talk to Fred right now. Fred's purpose is to talk to you, so to speak. But what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything that a human being can understand. I'll put it that way. I can't see that it just doesn't. This is just a happening. It's not even real. It's real as in the sense of experiencing it as real. But that's experiencing is not the same thing as truth. It's just like the sense of, there's a sense of being. Is that the same thing as a statement of being? No, it's a sense of being. It means I'm not really sure. I have a sense of being, but I can't categorically swear that I am the same way that every other spiritual teacher can. I'm just telling you that that's out of my pay grade. And a bunch of other people should be saying something similar. But, you know, they say what they say, and that's because they're supposed to say what they say, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not trying to get on anybody else's case. I'm trying to help you come to see the truth that is right here, right under your nose, right in front of you. This is it. This is awakening, but you're looking at it from an individual or awakeness, but you're looking at it from an individual point of view, which is made up. There's no separation. There's no individual to see or experience awakening. Now you hear units that have wonderful experiences and all that, and that's great. I mean, I had a pretty fun candy experience myself back in the day, but that's just a claim made by a unit. Fred didn't have an awakening because there wasn't any Fred there. Awakeness woke up to the fact that there's no Fred. Fred wanted desperately to wake up to the truth of God, and the truth of God woke up to the fiction of Fred instead. I thought I was going to pull the curtain back on and see God. And I pulled back the curtain and I saw myself, because there isn't anything else. You've been looking at yourself ever since you were born, but you didn't know it. You were not conscious of that fact. And you may not be conscious of that fact right now because you may be rejecting this. But do it at your own peril, because you don't know what it means to tell yourself the truth. If you're not awake at this moment right now, you don't know what it's like to tell yourself the truth. The truth about what? About the truth. About who you really are. And when you do, it's like, oh no, you're kidding. How could I have missed this? How could I have missed myself? It's the most obvious thing. I'm the most obvious thing. Here it is. This is what I look like today. I am also the formless, and there's no separation there either. Two varieties of the very same thing. Form is a mirror of the formless. It's a mirror image of the formless. Well, I think we're about deep enough, and I think I've gone long enough to have confused everybody quite thoroughly. So thanks for hanging out. I hope you're here at the end with me. Because if you stayed to the end, you've got a wonderful chance of waking up. And if you cut off early, the earlier you cut off, the less your chances were. That's the truth, or less your chances are. That's the truth. That's just how it works. Because practices and things like this, they don't work. So we say, for who? For awakeness to talk to itself in a manner such as this is vital if it wants to discover who it is through a given unit. I know that I am awakeness and I'm operating through this unit, through this bag of conditioning. And it's not even separate, it's just conditioning. And this is localized conditioning, if you will. Localized conditioning, and awakeness is talking about itself and seeing itself through the eyes and the ears and all the senses. That's the animating presence. The animating presence is the end user of the senses. It's not Fred. Fred is a tool of the animating presence to experience itself objectively. And it is thrilling, but not for Fred. It's thrilling for me. And will it feel thrilling to you right off? I don't know. If you really see it, it will. But if you just kind of get a fuzzy thing, it may or may not. I don't know. But no matter what you get, if you see some part of the truth, you've seen the whole truth all the way through, but you just can't take it in. It's just, I mean, when I say you've seen it, I mean God has seen it. No individual ever sees it because there is no individual. Okay, class is over. I love you. It's been great to be here. I hope you enjoyed it too. See you later. Bye-bye.